Hey, welcome to Crossroads. The NGOs being accused of helping operate the border crisis are now put on notice in Texas. Let me explain. So, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, he has issued a message to all of the NGOs involved in programs related to mass illegal immigration. And in his own words, he's putting them on notice. And he's suggesting that if they're helping facilitate mass migration, they could face criminal charges, at least in Texas. Now, he launched investigations so far into one of the NGOs that at least he alleges is part of the mass migrations program that was actually done earlier this year, but on Wednesday, just a couple days ago, his office announced they're seeking an injunction against this group in Texas where they're trying to stop their operations on this, right? Now, let me show you the official statement from the Office of the Attorney General in Texas. It says this: Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton filed an application for a temporary injunction against Anunciation House to halt its systemic criminal conduct in Texas. It says the Office of the Attorney General, OAG, has reviewed and obtained sworn testimony indicating that Anunciation House's operations are designed to facilitate illegal border crossings and to conceal illegally present aliens from law enforcement. It's pretty serious allegations. In other words, he's accusing them of facilitating illegal aliens crossing the U.S.-Mexico border and then hiding them, right, concealing them from law enforcement once they're in the United States. That's his allegation. I'll get into the details on it. Now, it notes that earlier this year, the Office of the Attorney General, OAG, issued a request for documents from Anunciation House in an effort to understand its operations. And it says instead of producing a single document, Anunciation House sued the OAG. They sued the Attorney General's office. They note that since that time, Anunciation House's own sworn testimony has shown that Anunciation House operates as a criminal enterprise. Again, this is the allegation, innocent until proven guilty, but let's see what they have to say. And notes that it knowingly shelters illegal aliens. They're saying this NGO, right? Knowingly, they claim, shelters illegal aliens who evaded Border Patrol when crossing. It notes that it even goes into Mexico to retrieve aliens who Border Patrol denied. Then, by its own admission, it conceals those people in its shelters from law enforcement, and notes as well that it will not let any alien in, yet it paradoxically refuses to comply with any law enforcement demands. Its own website even boasts that it houses people who cross the border with, quote, help from a coyote, which are, of course, the human traffickers in Mexico. Now, the OAG claims as well that Anunciation House initially claimed it had a religious right to refuse compliance with OAG's investigations. They say that they don't have to comply, right? But it notes that, but when asked under oath how his religion would be burdened by producing documents to OAG, Anunciation House's executive director admitted that it would not. And when OAG, the Office of the Attorney General, sought to ascertain what religious practices even occur at Anunciation House, its senior staff gave nonsensical answers, including practicing the, quote, 7 commandments. I thought there were 10 commandments, but apparently 7, right? Now, those are, of course, pretty strong allegations. Those come from the Office of the Attorney General in Texas. I will say again, innocent until proven guilty. These are the allegations from the, again, state attorney, right? Right now, though, Paxton, the Attorney General in Texas, is trying to stop Anunciation House from carrying out its operations. He's alleging the NGOs, not just this one, but other ones as well, are shielding illegal immigrants from law enforcement, that they're part of the program to run the mass illegal immigration into the U.S. Something I've found as well, as I noted in my recent documentary, which I hope you all saw last night, the United Nations is running this operation alongside the United States, and the NGOs are kind of the boots on the ground for these operations. Different ones play different roles, but there's a lot of them, in fact, close to 250 of them. Now, as Ken Paxton notes, right, this case goes back to about February 20th regarding this particular one that he's accusing, Anunciation House. Now, he mentions that he had requested documents from the NGO as part of legal action. And he says that the group has not complied with that request. They're not providing documents requested by the Attorney General in Texas. Now, at first, they wanted 30 days to respond. Ken Paxton deemed them, or said he deemed them non-compliant if they didn't respond within 1 day. And so what happened instead was the head of the NGO got a temporary restraining order that blocked Ken Paxton's demands for those records. And that's kind of where we're at right now. So currently, we don't really know what the organization is actually doing, and we don't really know the full details of Paxton's accusations because of this. It's an ongoing case that was blocked because of the court order. Now, again, the group is not providing documents to Texas authorities, and currently the case is on a standstill because of this, which is where it's important now because we're seeing the next step of it. Now, on Annunciation House's side, they made some public statements about the case. Let me show you what New York Post had to say on it. They said Annunciation House, a volunteer Catholic organization which offers advocacy and education around immigration issues, their words, to migrants, refugees, and the economically vulnerable, they say, didn't immediately respond to the Post's request for comment, but it notes the organization has previously called Paxton's allegations, quote, illegal, immoral, and anti-faith, along with unfounded. They say that, quote, Annunciation House has provided hospitality to hundreds of thousands of refugees for over 46 years. It is a work recognized by the Catholic Church and is listed, it says, in the National Catholic Directory. They note that Annunciation House has done this work of compliance out of the scriptural and gospel mandate to welcome the stranger. And that's the narrative they're using, right? That's what the group said in a previous statement. Now, it notes that on Wednesday, the Texas Rio Grande legal aid lawyer, Jerome Wesovich, who represents Annunciation House, claimed that Paxton's filings are, quote, all heat and no light, and they say the court set forth an orderly process for deciding this case, and Annunciation House intends to follow that process. They note as well that, quote, while the Attorney General, Ken Paxton, drums up attention to his false claims, they say, Annunciation House continues to serve refugees as the law allows and as the gospel commands. Again, the idea that they say that this is work for the needy, basically, right? To, in their own words, welcome the stranger. Welcome the stranger. We'd assume that regards, of course, the illegal immigrants. Now, the group claims the services it offers are, quote, no different from that of the schools who enroll children of refugees, the clinics and hospitals who care for the needs of refugees, and the churches, synagogues, and mosques who welcome families to join in worship. That's their side of it, right? So, look, in other words, we're going to need to wait and see how this particular case moves forward before we really get the documents and see the details, because currently they're locked up. We don't really know. With that said, though, the new injunction from Paxton they're trying to stop the NGO right now from carrying out some of its alleged operations, including, again, they claim, concealing the illegal immigrants from authorities, right? That's what the allegation is, and that's what they're trying to get the injunction against. But even beyond this, Paxton is suggesting these legal actions are just the beginning. He's gone after one so far. He's claiming he's going to go after a whole bunch more. Let me talk about this more after a quick word from our sponsor.
Experts agree. One of the best ways to protect against financial uncertainty is to diversify your portfolio. Learn how physical gold and silver can secure your retirement funds from today's economic challenges. With a gold IRA from American Hartford Gold, you can safeguard your wealth with no penalties or taxes when you transfer your current qualifying retirement accounts. Call now and our precious metals specialists will send you a free information kit, no cost or obligation. American Hartford Gold, a trusted industry leader with an A+ from the Better Business Bureau, has a 5-star rating from thousands of happy clients. Whether you are getting physical precious metals in a gold IRA or delivered to your doorstep, we offer only the highest quality gold and silver. For your peace of mind, we also offer a no-fee buyback commitment, a low price guarantee, along with free shipping and free insurance. So don't wait. Call the number on your screen today and secure your financial future.
Welcome back. Now, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton is seeking an injunction against Annunciation House, one of the NGOs that's being accused of being involved in operations to facilitate mass illegal immigration at the U.S. border. Now, even beyond this injunction, though, which, if it goes through, could actually stop the group's operations and probably move the case forward. Paxton is suggesting, again, the Texas Attorney General is suggesting that these illegal actions could be just the start. These legal actions, he's going against them. In particular, when he's going after these NGOs, he gave a warning to similar NGOs that are playing roles in the programs for mass illegal immigration. He's putting them on notice. Let me show you what he said on X. He said, quote, "Today I filed an application for a temporary injunction against Anunciation House to halt its systemic criminal conduct in Texas." He says, "My office has reviewed and obtained sworn testimony indicating that Anunciation House's operations are designed to facilitate illegal border crossings and to conceal illegally present aliens from law enforcement." He says, any NGO, and there's a lot of them by the way, any NGO facilitating the unlawful entry of illegal aliens into Texas is undermining the rule of law and potentially jeopardizing the safety and well-being of our citizens. He says all NGOs who are complicit in Joe Biden's illegal immigration catastrophe and think they are above the law should consider themselves on notice. Now, look, this could actually make some real big waves if he follows through on it. Now, you could argue, I've talked about this in my recent documentary, Weapons of Mass Migration. Maybe y'all saw it last night. Briefly on that, in my recent investigation, I went to Panama. Of course, I went to the Darien Gap, at least the mouth of it, and I investigated what's actually happening there. And what you find on the ground is that there's basically a massive United Nations operation facilitating illegal entry of migrants upwards all through Latin America and into the United States. It turns out the United States has an agreement with the United Nations called, well, there's a couple of them. There's the Grand Bargain, they call it, which does a lot of the cash handouts. I detail this in the documentary. That includes the envelopes of cash they give to the illegal immigrants. That also includes the debit cards and so on they give to the illegal immigrants. I detail that and the programs to facilitate it, and that's your tax dollars, folks. I detail that in the documentary. We also talk about the program overarching to run this whole thing. And of course, part of that program involves operations of the NGOs. The NGOs are kind of the boots on the ground at various junctures that work on these things, especially once it gets into the United States, and especially at the US-Mexico border. Because, of course, the United Nations can't operate within America's borders in that regard, at least, right? They can't carry out those ground operations. NGOs are the method it uses, and they're actually part of its documents, which I'll show you in a minute. There's also, the other program I mentioned is the Global Compact for Migration. That is the agreement that the U.S. government has signed with the United Nations. There's over 100 members, I think like 170 members globally. Different countries involved in it, and that is what establishes this process. Now you could argue, hey, it's legal, it's a program that Biden or Obama started, Trump got us out of, and Biden brought us back into, but just because a president has done something doesn't mean that it's legal, as we're seeing now with the actions against Donald Trump. The precedent that is now established is that the actions of presidents, if they are not on a legal foundation, could be deemed criminal, and everybody connected with them can be charged criminally. That is what we're currently watching in the illegal actions against Donald Trump. His efforts to investigate election fraud, his efforts notably to get dueling electors, protests that were started, like January 6th, based on his public statements and so on. You could argue those were actions of the president, and of course, maybe had some legal founding. Of course, he was consulting with lawyers, but that is now framed as criminal conspiracy. These same type of operations could be deemed criminal conspiracy because in the United States, it is illegal to aid or abet illegal immigrants. And you could argue, well, they're not really illegal if it's through the amnesty program, but if they're defrauding the amnesty program, if they're going through human traffickers, if they're facilitating and encouraging human trafficking in foreign countries, that actually is criminal by U.S. law. And so actually this could be deemed a massive criminal operation. And if you include the fact that, again, the criminals, the cartels, the human traffickers, the coyotes, the snakeheads, the Chinese human traffickers, if you include all of them in the big picture and use the same basis of law they're using against Trump, RICO, right? Racketeering charges, whereby you charge everybody involved by extension in a crime. Actually, based on a RICO charge, they could be charged with human trafficking in the whole 9 yards. This could be deemed a massive criminal operation, despite the fact that, again, the United Nations and U.S. government officials are involved with it, depending on how they want to interpret it. Again, we're currently watching very similar methods being used to go after Trump and Trump's associates. That said, as well, the Global Compact for Migration is technically an international agreement, right? Under U.S. law, international treaties, under the Constitution, international treaties can only be deemed legal if they get a 2/3 vote from Congress. That is our Constitution, that's what it says. They bypass that process by not calling it a treaty. They call it, again, a compact. That is questionably legal as well, and possibly could show up in future criminal charges if they do decide to pursue it. We'll see how that goes, if that ever possibly happens. But my point being, based on current legal precedents, we could actually see this expand into really serious, very large-scale criminal charges. What Ken Paxton is doing in Texas represents kind of the breaking of the breaking charge with all this. He is beginning criminal charges and so on against the NGOs, the boots on the ground, carrying out these operations. And he's gone after one so far. Again, innocent until proven guilty. They deny the allegations, but he's making some pretty serious allegations against them. Now, on that note, when it comes to the organizations themselves, right, the United Nations and so on, and the NGOs, this is not actually secret. And in fact, the United Nations has disclosed some of the operations, the funding, where the money goes, and even disclosed the NGOs involved year by year. In addition to that, they even detail, in their own words, wording that suggests that they're knowingly breaking the law. They seem to understand, based in their own language, that some of these activities may be in violation of the law. Now, let me show you a report from January on the United Nations budget for 2024, which details this. Center for Immigration Studies had some analysis on it and also quotes from the doc. Let me show you what they said. They said, but now there's the UN's, United Nations, 2024 update to the Regional Refugee and Migration Response Plan. That's the name of it, folks. A planning and budget document for handing out nearly $1.6 billion in 17 Latin American countries can cast a broad confirming light on the cash giveaways and much more aid for 2024, with the helping hands of 248 named non-governmental organizations, NGOs. It notes that despite the RMRP plan title naming Venezuelans as recipients of this aid operation, $1.7 billion, the document's fine print, and it goes into it, of course, says this, that the largesse goes to, quote, all nationalities and multiple other nationalities. And that's important because certain countries are eligible for amnesty in the United States, right? According to the legal basis for this. Some countries, Venezuela, Cuba, Haiti, well, it used to be, right? Venezuela, Cuba, currently. Certain countries would be deemed, if people were to leave, they would be deemed valid refugees depending on the details of it. If they stayed in another country, like Chile or something like that, they would no longer be legal because they had found safe refuge in another country, meaning they didn't actually need to seek refuge in the United States. That's why a lot of them notably discard their ID cards. It's to conceal that type of information, which again, if you go to the Mexico side of the Rio Grande, the ground is covered with their ID cards. Now, back to this program though, when it says that it goes to all nationalities, what they're doing, it seems, is they're using the narrative of the Venezuelans because that's the legal foundation, but through them, they're making a gateway for all nationalities. So they're concealing within the Venezuelan definition the ability to give this money to everybody, meaning this is not just about amnesty. This is not just about people actually in need. It goes to, in their own words, quote, all nationalities. Now, it notes in this report that in a nutshell, the UN, United Nations, and its advocacy partners are planning to spread $372 million in cash and voucher assistance and multi-purpose cash assistance. And they're going to give that, it says, to some 624,000 immigrants in transit to the United States during 2024. And notes that money is most often handed out, other documents show, as prepaid rechargeable debit cards, but also hard cash-in envelopes, bank transfers, and mobile transfers the U.S. border-bound travelers can use for whatever they want. Briefly on that, this program that runs under the narrative of, this cash in envelopes and bank transfers and so on, right? This is one of the things I detail in the documentary as well. This report in particular is focused on that United Nations program, but this is actually not even the full picture. The 248 NGOs detailed in this particular United Nations program of giving your hard-earned money to illegal immigrants to illegally enter this country, that's actually just one piece of it. But even then, I want to show you this because it does show a piece of it, right? Just keep in mind, it's actually not even limited to this. It's actually even bigger than this. This is one part of it. Now, the report notes that without distinction, both populations get access to UN cash, United Nations cash. And keep in mind, the three biggest donors to the United Nations, the United States, the Chinese Communist Party, and Japan. Back on this, though, it notes that without distinction, both populations get access to UN cash, but also humanitarian transportation. They ship them. They move them. Shelter, food, legal advice, personal hygiene products, healthcare, and protection against threats like human smuggling and much more, besides cash in envelopes or debit cards. You could call that aiding and abetting in some countries. It notes that some 57 international organizations would manage the handouts of the $273 million, while 132 national NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and, quote, civil service organizations would handle $70 million in aid. 15 UN agencies, United Nations agencies, would get the lion's share at $1.2 billion. It notes their plan frequently acknowledges the illegality, saying, for instance, in other words, they're acknowledging that this is illegal in some countries. Let me read that again. Quote, their plan frequently acknowledges, the illegality, saying, for instance, that 1 in 3 of the Venezuelan migrants the UN aims to help are in, quote, irregular situations. 1 out of 3, folks, including those, quote, who have crossed international borders without complying with all the legal and administrative requirements for entry and may not have the required documentation to do so. If they don't have the required documentation to do so, and if they're in violation of the law, then what does it mean if you assist them? Is it not aiding and abetting in a crime? Which is, of course, one of the big allegations. Now, it says and remember, this is with the intent of helping them move to the United States to then enter the United States. And if it notes that in the process of doing that, they've been in violation of the law and don't have the required documentation to do so, what do you call that? Well, some might refer to that as human trafficking, or at least aiding and abetting of people to violate American law. Now, it notes that the original 2023 to 2024 plan even spelled out that, quote, special attention will be given to the use of cash and voucher assistance for in-transit populations, including the need for comprehensive solutions throughout the journey. The report also notes the only expression of apparent concern about supporting people clearly intending to break U.S. law shows up on a page depicting a map with the thin red line of a migration route leading to the U.S. border at about El Paso, in Texas, of course, El Paso, Texas. And note that someone took the trouble to add a footnote on that page noting that the map, quote, does not imply official endorsement or acceptance by the UN. In other words, they have a map suggesting they understand that they're facilitating the movement of these individuals to the U.S.-Mexico border, in particular in El Paso, Texas, but has a footnote claiming that the UN does not endorse or accept this technically, right? It does not officially do that. And that raises the question of then what are they doing? What is the intent? What is the purpose of facilitating these people? Are they intentionally moving them to El Paso's border and they just expect them to wait in Mexico and just live there in Mexico? That raises some serious legal questions that might need some serious legal investigations. But look, in other words, what we can say, the United Nations documents on this give a lot of details on these operations. The operations carried out by the NGOs as part of these programs, 248 NGOs. The money channels, possibly even including U.S. tax dollars being used for that because we're one of the top three donors. Well, we are the top donor to the United Nations. And even reference to the possible illegality of their operations, seemingly that they're knowingly assisting these individuals in the violation of international laws. In other words, we've discussed before the various programs that could allow illegal immigrants and other non-U.S. citizens to impact our elections, right? Well, on this as well, we could wonder, is this part of the plan? In my documentary, of course, you might have saw it last night, I also detail some of the discussions around this, but on the note of whether these things could impact our elections or whether some people may even be intending for that to happen. A bill was just passed by House Republicans that could prevent non-citizens from being counted towards representation and electoral college votes. But I'll be delving into this only on EpochTV.com. So for those of you watching on YouTube, Facebook, X, or Rumble, make sure to click on the link in the description below to get access to the rest of this episode as well. Also the live Q&A where I'm going to be answering some of your questions. So before we jump, what's really going on behind the border crisis? Well, that's an important question that I address in my new documentary. You might have seen it last night. It's called Weapons of Mass Migration. It is now available. I hope you can all watch it. It's only on EpochTV.com. And in this documentary, I detail, in fact, I went to some of these migrant camps they have in Latin America. I actually got access to some of the areas where they're moving them. I got access to the entire process, showing you what's actually happening. And I think you'll be shocked by it. We show, of course, the United Nations compounds. We show the operations of the NGOs. We show coordination on the U.S. side of the U.S.-Mexico border, where Customs Border Protection is being forced basically to just be processors. They arrest people, which is, if you read a lot of the mainstream media content, they note that arrests are up. What happens when they arrest them? Well, they take them to processing facilities run alongside CBP and, again, Homeland Security Department, and they just register them into the amnesty program. They register them. That's what the arrests look like. After they're done registering them, they give them papers, they give them a free airplane ticket to anywhere they want to go. They put them on a bus and they drop them off on the streets of the United States. I have it on video and I show it in the documentary. Not only that, but I also detail the plans behind it. I detail the conversations behind it. I detail the possible, I go into the possible intent behind it. Including some of the advice that was given to Barack Obama from his main immigration advisors, mainly around impacting our elections, notably, and they say it openly. There's even public statements they made on it. I show you the United Nations plans on it, especially as it relates to, for example, global equity and also other things like that. And I also detail the plans of the enemies of the United States, countries like the Chinese Communist Party and Russia and others, where they're talking about tearing down America, frankly, getting rid of the unipolar world order, which is the phrase they use for tearing down the United States, and replacing it with what they call the multipolar world order, the shared global governance after America has been torn down. I know it's shocking, I know it sounds far out, but I show it to you. Now, that being said, I hope you can all watch that documentary. I think it can have a big impact, and I think it can help change, frankly, the discussion we're having on this issue. So if you want to find out what's really happening at the border and with the mass flow of illegal immigrants into the United States, be sure to click on the link in the description to watch Weapons of Mass Migration. I'll show you the trailer before we continue to the show exclusively on EpochTV.com.
An unrelenting stream of immigration. Non-stop.
According to statistics, around 7.2 million illegal immigrants entered the United States under President Joe Biden alone. They have United Nations facilities here, and the people pushing this are leading people to their death.
To what extent is the United Nations facilitating the border crisis?
They're throwing rocks!
They're being overridden by international powers.
We are not authorized to talk.
It is a humanitarian business now.
And they said, oh yeah, these are the debit cards. We're giving these debit cards to the immigrants.
Why all the cloak and dagger? Why are we being so stealthy about this?
Some of these people have gone on record and publicly talked about this. People close to Barack Obama.
It puts 12 million people on the path to citizenship and eventually voters.
I've been researching, of course, what's happening, but I want to know why it's happening.
We'll see chaos on a global scale until America is extinguished and the power shifts completely to the east.